Hello and welcome to PCI Reloaded. This is the show for entrepreneurs who want to become more powerful, creative, and influential in life and business through the study and application of NLP, hypnosis, and related disciplines. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about NLP modeling from the fundamental principles all the way to the different phases. Let's dive in. Modeling lies at the heart of NLP. It was through the process of modeling that the Milton model and meta model were created. First, Richard Bandler had modeled Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir on his own and began forming study groups at the University of California. John Grinder was an assistant professor at the time, and eventually the two of them ran into each other. Both of them were fascinated by Richard's ability and wanted to formalize exactly what he was doing. Grinder made an offer to Bandler that went something like, "If you teach me what you are doing, then I will tell you what you are doing." From there, the rest is history. The idea behind modeling is simple. You find someone who has above average skill in a particular domain, you figure out how they do it, and then you install that skill either in yourself or other people. Modeling achieves two particular goals: getting a particular result and learning explicitly how to do it. Not only does the modeler benefit from learning a new skill, but the person being modeled will gain a deeper understanding of how they do what they do. Chapter 1. Basic Principles of Modeling. According to the dictionary, a model is a system or thing used as an example to follow or imitate. This comes close to describing the NLP modeling process. In NLP modeling, we are creating a thing to be followed and imitated to achieve a specific result. A common application of NLP modeling includes repeating or refining a performance by specifying the steps followed by elite performers or during optimal examples of the activity. For example, let's take the game of chess. As of 2022, the top person in chess is a guy named Magnus Carlsen, considered to be one of the greatest chess players of all time. If you wanted to model certain chess-related skills, then Magnus would be an excellent candidate. Modeling is flexible in the sense that you don't have to apply the skill you learned in the same context that you originally found it. You can formalize a process through modeling and apply it to a completely different context. The possibilities are nearly endless. When it comes to modeling effective behaviors, there are multiple levels we may need to look at. The levels of modeling mirror the neurological levels created by NLP master trainer Robert Dilts. There are 7 levels in total, and each level contains a macro level and a micro level. The first level is the environment. At this level, we are considering when and where the person is performing the activity. The environment determines the external opportunities and the constraints that the person must react to. The macro environment includes things like the general habit and social context. The micro environment involves specific locations like an office, classroom, auditorium, etc. In addition to the environment itself, we can also look at the influence the person is having on their environment. Behavior is specifically what the person is doing and how they're reacting in their environment. Macro behavior includes things like general patterns, communications, and styles. Micro behaviors include things like tasks, specific work routines, and work habits. Capabilities are how a person generates behaviors in a particular context. This can be in the form of a mental map, plan, or strategy. Macro capabilities includes general strategies and skills like learning, memory, motivation, decision-making, and creativity. Micro capabilities includes things like visualization, internal self-dialogue, or how a person specifically uses their sense or cognitive capabilities during particular behavior or task. Beliefs and values tell us why a person does a particular thing in a particular time and place. They help to provide the reinforcement that either supports or inhibits capabilities. On a macro level, beliefs and values relate to the type of meaning, cause-effect relations, and boundaries people place on events or perceive in the surrounding world. On a micro level, a person's beliefs and values can relate to processes on other levels. A person may have beliefs about their environment, behavior, capabilities, and so on. We all have an identity in relation to our beliefs, capabilities, and actions within a given environment. In other words, we need to consider the who behind the what, when, where, why, and how. In order to establish a particular role, one must have a mission within the larger system that he or she is operating. Spiritual refers to how a person relates to the people around him, such as family, colleagues, social class, culture, etc. This is in regards to the larger system that one is a part of. The vision is based on the spiritual level and helps to define the purpose of an individual's behaviors, abilities, beliefs, values, and identities within the larger system that he or she is a part of. This level tends to be what ties everything together and gives all the other levels their ultimate meaning. Robert Dill suggests we visualize the relationship of each level as a network of generative systems that focus or converge on the identity of the individual as a core of the modeling process. Most NLP NLP modeling processes focus on the capabilities level, also known as a how-to. Capabilities are what connect beliefs and values to specific behaviors. Without the how, knowing what one is supposed to do and why to do it is ineffective. Even though a strong emphasis is placed on modeling capabilities, that doesn't mean it's the only level that is looked at. Creating an effective model is often a gestalt of values, beliefs, and specific behaviors that produce the desired capacity. A huge benefit of modeling capabilities is they tend to be non-linear in application. You can model a particular skill and apply to a variety of different situations, tasks, or contexts. We can understand how skills are organized using the TOTE model. The TOTE model provides a feedback loop between goals, the choices it means to accomplish those goals, and the evidence used to assess progress towards those goals. According to the TOTE model, all mental and behavioral programs revolve around having a fixed goal and a variable means to attain that goal. As we think, we set goals in our mind, either consciously or unconsciously, and develop a test for when that goal has been achieved. If the goal hasn't been achieved, then we operate to change something or do something to get closer to the goal. When our test criteria has been satisfied, we then exit on to the next step. In order to model a particular skill or performance, we must identify each of the key elements of the TOTE related to that skill or performance. Those key elements are the performer goals, the evidence and evidence procedures used by the performer to determine progress towards that goal, the set of choices used by the performer to get to the goal, and the specific behaviors used to implement those choices, and the way the performer responds if the goal is not initially achieved. When it comes to modeling the TOTE elements of an exceptional performer, there are different levels we can consider, such as the one previously mentioned. We can consider the performer's goals in terms of behavior, capability, beliefs, values, etc. Different levels of goals require different levels of evidence and operations and have different levels of problems. Some skills and capabilities are made up of other skills and capabilities. In such cases, each subskill will have to be modeled separately. If you wanted to become a great chess player, you would have to master several skills such as visualization, calculation, evaluating, and planning, among others. We can apply the modeling process to different levels of complexity with respect to different skills and capabilities. In total, there are 6 types of skills we can model. Simple behavioral skills are specific, concrete, observable actions that take place within a short period of time, anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. Examples include things like getting into a particular state, shooting a basket, and brushing your teeth. Simple cognitive skills are specific, easily identifiable, and testable mental processes which occur within a short period of time. Examples include remembering names, spelling, and acquiring simple vocabulary. Simple linguistic skills are the recognition and use of keywords, phrases, and questions. Complex behavior skills are a combination of simple behavioral actions done in a particular way. Examples include performing surgery, making a presentation, playing a part in a film, and so on. Complex linguistic skills are the skilled use of language in a highly dynamic, often spontaneous situation. Examples include persuasion, negotiation, verbal reframing, and storytelling. Complex cognitive skills are those which require a synthesis or sequence of other simple thinking skills. Examples include solving a math problem, designing a house, and planning a wedding, to name a few. Before you can start modeling, you must consider the level or chunk size you will be focusing on. Distinctions, procedures for modeling one level of skill may be ineffective at modeling a different level. Chapter 2, NLP Modeling Methodology. Before we dive into the specifics of modeling, it may be useful if you got a high-level overview of how modeling works. Modeling can be broken up into 3 distinct phases. There's also some preparation we need to do beforehand to ensure we get started off on the right foot. To prepare for modeling, you must first select a person who has the capability you wish to model. Then you must determine the following: the context in which you will do the modeling, where and when you will have access to the person being modeled, what relationship you want with the person being modeled, what state you will be in while doing the modeling, and establishing the appropriate conditions, anchors, and lifelines that will allow you to fully commit to the project. Once your preparation is complete, we can begin the first phase of modeling. The first phase is called unconscious uptake. In this phase, you are to engage the person being modeled in an example of the desired performance or capability within the appropriate context. You start modeling them by going into second position in order to build intuitions about the skills the person is demonstrating. You're not looking for any specific patterns in this phase. You're simply taking on the physiology and posture of the model and attempting to identify yourself with him or her internally. Don't try to consciously understand what they're doing. Not yet. A useful state to adopt in this phase is the state of not knowing. This is where you drop all previous mental maps and assumptions with reference to one's ongoing experience. Once you have a good set of intuitions from being in second position with the person you're modeling, you want to arrange for a context where you can use the skill you've been modeling. Try out the skill within that context as if you're the person you've been modeling. Then try to achieve the same result by just being yourself. This will give you a double description of the particular skill you're modeling. When the result you get is roughly the same as those the person being modeled gets, then the first phase will be complete. Phase 2 is called the subtraction process. In this phase, the goal is to sort out what is essential in the model's behavior versus what is unnecessary, and to be explicit about the strategies and behaviors you model. You can use your first position, aka first person behaviors, as a reference since you're able to get similar results to the person being modeled. Your main task is to clarify and define the specific cognitive and behavioral steps that are required to produce the desired results within the chosen context. You also need to systematically leave out pieces of any of the behaviors or strategies you've identified in order to see what makes the difference. Anything that you leave out that doesn't make any difference to the responses you get is not essential to the model. When you leave out something that does make a difference to the results you get, then you found a crucial part of the model. Once you've completed this stage, you will have a triple description of the model. You will have a minimum model of how you replicate the model's capabilities for yourself, i.e. first position. You will have second position intuitions of the model's capabilities that you develop from placing yourself in his or her shoes, and you will have a third position perspective from which you can notice the difference between the way you replicate the model's capabilities and how that person manifested the capability in his or her original way. The third and final phase of modeling is called design. In this phase of modeling, you take everything you've learned from the previous phases and design a context and procedure which enables others to learn the skills you have modeled and thus be able to get the results that the person who served as a model has been able to achieve. To produce a design, you must integrate all three perceptual positions, first, second, and third. Rather than mimic or imitate the specific steps followed by the person being modeled, it is generally more effective to create the appropriate reference experience for the learners that will help them discover and develop the particular circuits they will need to perform the skill effectively. Different people have different levels of conscious and unconscious competencies as their starting states. Some may be able to combine multiple steps of a procedure together into one step, while others may need a particular step broken down into sub-skills. Another way to look at modeling is through an 8-step process. The first 6 steps cover both the first and second phases of the modeling process we mentioned previously. The last 2 steps deal primarily with the design phase of the modeling process. Here they are. Step 1. Engage the skill to be modeled within the appropriate context. Step 2. Gather information from multiple perspectives. Step 3. Filter for relevant features and patterns. Step 4. Organize the patterns into a coherent structure/model. Step 5. Test the usefulness and effectiveness of the model by trying them out in specific situations and contexts to make sure you achieve the desired result. Step 6. Reduce the model to its simplest form that will produce the desired result. Step 7. Identify the best procedure to transfer or install the specific skills identified in the modeling process. Step 8. Determine the most appropriate instruments to measure results of the model and find the limits or edge of the model's validity. In the phases of modeling, we briefly touched on the various perceptual positions used in NLP modeling. Perceptual positions play an important role in how we gather information during the modeling process. There are 4 perceptual positions in total that we use. First position is our own personal perspective. In this position, we gather information by trying something out for ourselves and exploring the way we do it. Second position is also called your perspective. Here we gather information by standing in the shoes of the person to be modeled and attempting to think and act like the other person as much as possible. Third position is sometimes referred to as the meta position. In this position, we observe the person being modeled as they interact with other people, ourselves included, as an unevolved witness. We suspend personal judgments and notice only what our senses perceive. Fourth position, also known as group referencing, is where we perceive a situation from the perspective of the whole system or the relational field involved in the situation. It's an intuitive synthesis of all prior perspectives in order to get a sense of the entire gestalt. At the very least, you need the first 3 positions for effective behavioral modeling. Perceiving a situation from multiple perspectives allows one to gain broader insight and understanding with respect to that event or behavior. Behaviors can be modeled either implicitly or explicitly. Implicit modeling involves moving to second position with the modeling subject. You're stepping into that person's shoes and adopting their perspective as if it's your own. From here, you can start building personal intuitions about that individual's subjective experience. This is a more unconscious form of modeling and is used to examine behavior as a whole. Implicit modeling tends to be analog in nature and is comparable to a child's perspective. It is an inductive process where we take in and perceive patterns of the world around us. Explicit modeling involves moving to third position to describe the structure of the modeling subject's experience so that it can be transferred to others. This is considered a more conscious form of modeling, and one of its main goals is to break down the behavior into its component parts. We need both explicit and implicit modeling in order to model effectively. Without the implicit phase, there's no effective intuition base from which to build an explicit model. Without the explicit phase, the information that has been modeled cannot be turned into tools and techniques to be transferred to others. Implicit modeling is more than enough if you want to help a person develop personal unconscious competence with the desired behavior. If you want to create a technique, procedure, or skill set that can be taught or transferred to others, then explicit modeling is required. NLP was born from both implicit and explicit modeling. It started off with Richard Bandler implicitly modeling Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir through the use of videotapes and direct experience. Even though he was good at what he did, he couldn't figure out exactly how he was doing it. John Grinder was responsible for the explicit modeling. As mentioned previously in this video, Grinder made an offer to Bandler that enriched both of them in the process. Bandler showed Grinder what he was doing, and Grinder explained to Bandler what Bandler was doing. Elicitation is how we gather information and identify relevant features and patterns related to the totes of the person being modeled. In addition to questionnaires and interviews, it's useful to take a more active role in gathering information, like role plays, simulations, and real-life observation of the expert in the appropriate context. The most common NLP elicitation methods either has the person recall and relive a specific experience or carry out a task that presupposes or triggers a particular capability, strategy, resource, or problem. If you wanted to model a chess player, you can either ask them to recall a time when they were playing a chess game, or you can have them play chess against a computer on the spot. The main advantage of the first method is that it allows the modeling subject to gain some distance from the experience in order to reflect on its structure. If there are aspects of the experience that are unpleasant, it will be easier for them to dissociate. The main disadvantage of the first method is that it may give mixed or contaminated signals because the person has to continually go through the process of recall. They may move in and out of the state being accessed, which may create confusion for the viewer. There's also a lot of filtering in the form of deleting, distorting, and generalizing that occurs as they are determining what to access and present to others. The second method's main advantage is that it provides immediate, higher quality information about the experiences or states to be explored and utilized. There's less conscious filtering and more spontaneous, unconscious cues available. The main disadvantage of the second method is that the modeling subject tends to get caught up in the content of the experience and is unable to reflect on the process and develop metacognition. There's also the risk that the modeling subject becomes overly self-conscious about what they're doing, which may lead to discomfort and dissociation from the experience. A particular skill or capability, regardless of its level of sophistication or complexity, is made up of several dimensions relating to the functions defined by the toad. Successful performance of any type requires the ability to conceptualize, analyze, observe, follow procedures, interact with others, and manage relationships to some degree. Conceptualization, analysis, and observation are necessary for creating effective tests. They relate to establishing goals and determining evidence for success. Following procedures, interacting with others, and managing relationships are aspects of the operations necessary to effectively reach the goal and satisfy the evidence needed for the test phase of a particular toad. Finding relevant patterns involve two key processes: feature detection and pattern recognition. Features are specific qualities or characteristics that we decide to filter for as we're modeling. This includes characteristics like rep systems, linguistic patterns, eye movements, and so on. The features we look for determine the kind of patterns we find. Pattern recognition is a process or procedures used to identify the particular features or distinctions that are the most important for achieving a goal or result. The most fundamental way to accomplish this is to find a group of people that demonstrate the desired capability or are able to achieve the desired result, and find the similarities and differences between them with respect to the features and characteristics you want to explore. Your main goal is to determine the specific features that are common to the processes used by all of the individuals being modeled. In NLP, there's a method called contrastive analysis, which involves observing which features are always present when a particular result is achieved and which are always absent when a result is not achieved. For example, a person may notice during their creative state that they have constructed visual images and positive internal self-talk. When they are unable to reach that state, there are no such images and the presence of a critical internal voice. Contrastive analysis is not a foolproof method. For instance, one can use contrastive analysis to show that the main works of genius were done by white Caucasian males of European descent. However, this does not mean that women and non-European people are incapable of producing works of genius. Chapter 3, Modeling Strategies. Modeling strategies are subprocesses within the overall NLP modeling methodology. Modeling strategies tend to be used during explicit modeling or when creating tools and procedures to transfer capabilities to others. Modeling strategies utilize both inductive and deductive processes. Inductive processes involve perceiving the world around us. Deductive processes are those through which we describe and act based on our perceptions. The difference between inductive and deductive processes is the same as the difference between between understanding a language versus speaking it. We'll be covering 3 types of modeling strategies in this section: micromodeling, macromodeling, and applied modeling. Micromodeling strategies involve modeling pieces of a specific skill, such as a simple behavioral, simple cognitive, or a simple linguistic ability. Here's a simple 3-step process for micromodeling. Identify the skill you want to find out about, have the person to be modeled demonstrate an example of that skill in a specific context, and elicit the person's tote for applying that skill in that context. Macromodeling strategies involve identifying component skills of a more complex or involved ability, such as a complex behavioral, complex cognitive, or complex linguistic ability. Here's a 3-step process for macromodeling. Engage the person in a context that requires the ability. Identify specific behavioral examples and demonstrations of the ability to be modeled. Starting with the behavior, elicit varied levels of the process that support the behavior. An effective applied modeling strategy is made up of 3 parts: identifying key capabilities possessed by the individuals who are able to achieve a certain outcome or result, specifying particular individuals who may benefit from being able to learn those capabilities and achieve those results, and defining which of those capabilities are most needed by individuals who acquire the skill or desire to achieve the result. One common approach to applied modeling is to identify a need or problem and then find someone who possesses the capabilities and resources necessary to effectively deal with the need or problem. Another approach involves identifying the capabilities possessed by individuals who are able to achieve a particular outcome, and then identifying a group of individuals who could benefit the most from those capabilities. Applied modeling can help with putting the information we gather from other modeling strategies into practice. We can structure this information gathering using a present state, desired state format known as a score model. The score model allows us to define the essential features of a particular problem space. Here's a breakdown. S stands for the symptoms associated with the present or problem state. C stands for the causes of those symptoms. O stands for the desired outcome that will replace those symptoms. R stands for the resources that are necessary to transform the symptoms and their causes. And E stands for the long-term effects of achieving the outcome. Generally speaking, the symptoms and causes are embodied by people who need or desire the capability to be modeled. The outcome, effects, and resources are embodied by the individuals to be modeled. Here's a basic applied modeling strategy. Identify the full score, defining the problem space to be addressed by the modeling project. Elicit a multi-level description of the problem space of the individual who need the resource being modeled. Elicit a multi-level description of the capabilities of the individuals who possess the resources necessary to reach the desired state. Transfer the relevant levels of resources possessed by the successful individuals to the individuals needing those capabilities. The final stages of applied modeling share many similarities with backpropagation and neural network technology. Neural networks are computer structures based on the way in which the brain functions. They are typically made of a number of interconnected elements that are used to create a type of model of some pattern or phenomenon. The model is formed as a function of weights, or the strengths of connections between the elements in the network. The inner model determines the output of the network. Backpropagation is a common strategy used by neural networks. To understand how it works, let's say a neural network is designed to recognize animals. For argument's sake, the image of a penguin is fed into the network. The image becomes coded as a pattern of reactions in the network based on the current weightings of the interconnections. As a product of this pattern, the network outputs a result, let's say a lion. If there's a discrepancy between the expected result and the actual result, the weightings are adjusted accordingly. The image is fed into the network again, and the process repeats itself. After a number of cycles, the output of the network will begin to match the desired result more often. In other words, the computer has created a useful model, one that achieves the desired result given a particular input. A similar method is used in NLP to refine a model after it has been established. In the case of NLP, the human being will be the neural network, and the different elements include things like rep systems, beliefs, values, language patterns, etc. Focusing on one particular distinction is like the process of giving weight to an element in a computer network. Where we place our attention creates an attractor that stimulates self-organizing behavior in a person. For instance, noticing a person's facial expressions rather than the types of clothes they're wearing will alter the way you respond to that person. Here's how to apply the backpropagation approach to applied modeling. Try out the steps, strategies, and distinctions defined by the model within the appropriate context. Notice the results you achieve and compare them to the desired result. Adjust the steps and distinctions proposed by the model in order to make a better approximation. Try out the newer adjustments to the model and continue to repeat the process until you or the person for whom the model is intended can achieve the required threshold of the desired result. Chapter 4. Code congruence. Gregory Bateson, a highly influential figure across many fields like social science, anthropology, linguistics, and others, once said that if you want to think about something, it is best to think about that thing in the same way in which that thing thunk. Bateson's understanding of code congruency asserts that the most effective and ecological models are those in which the relationships in the model match the relationships between the system of elements of the phenomenon on which we are modeling. An example of co-congruency is the path of the planets. When people believed that Earth was the center of the solar system, they had to come up with complicated math equations to account for the movements of the other planets. When things changed and the sun was placed at the center, the math became a lot simpler and more elegant. Models which are not co-congruent may be useful in some cases, but they do have their limits. I'll explain how co-congruence applies to behavioral modeling by telling you a quick story. In the early days of NLP, Richard Bandler and John Grinder decided to conduct a modeling seminar where they would model the work of Virginia Satir. They decided to break it up over 2 days. For the first day, Virginia would work with a family in the morning, demonstrating her approach to family therapy. Bandler and Grinder would reflect on her work and describe some of the key behavioral and linguistic patterns she had applied during the session. The next morning, she would work with another family, leaving the last afternoon for a final reflection and closing remarks. The first morning went as expected. Later that afternoon, Bandler and Grinder described how Virginia anchored various family members using nonverbal cues, how she led various individuals into certain states, how she created and triggered various responses in the family members, and so on. The next morning was a complete disaster. Virginia was unhappy with her work, and so were the family members and everyone else involved. According to Bateson's code congruence, Bandler and Grinder describe Satir's actions in mechanical cause and effect terms, which is probably not the way that Virginia herself thought about what she did, consciously or unconsciously. Her poor performance on the second day was not brought on by the fact that she was conscious of the process, but rather because the code used to model her process was not congruent with the structure of the actual process. Code congruency does not have to do with the accuracy of the content of the code or model. The most important thing is that the relationships between the elements and events in the model are congruent with the relationships between the elements and events making up the system we're modeling. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to dive deeper into NLP, then I recommend checking out our NLP mind map. It breaks down all the different topics and subtopics within NLP, and it's a really useful reference to have. So to get access to that mind map, all you have to do is go to pcialpha.com/mind map, and you can download it for free. All you have to do is enter your email and it'll get sent to your inbox within a few minutes or so. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on PCI Reloaded. Bye for now.